now proceed to our first panel for the day, the ICT Leaders panel. Please welcome on stage Andrew Feinberg, founder, chairman, and CEO, Netcracker Technology and Boston Gene; Badr Al-Zidi, CEO, Vodafone Oman; Maziad Al-Harbi, CEO, STC Kuwait; Dr. Bilal Jammoussi, Chief of the Study Groups Department, ITU; Miko Laventi, SVP MEA, Nokia Mobile Network; and Anwar Sousa, CEO, Safaricom Ethiopia. Moderating this panel will be Fuad Siddiqui, Global Partner, EY.
Well, we have an extremely distinguished panel here with us today. And I think especially given the time we are living in today with all the rampant inflation fears, geopolitical tensions, and the emerging out of the COVID shadows, we feel that there are lots of questions on the minds of the CEOs how to navigate the future. And one of the things that we found is that all the CEOs that we have spoken to globally, they stay pretty committed to the future investment strategy to guard against some of these challenges or interconnected challenges. And one of the interesting observations that we've seen is that advancements in technology and new business models and the whole notion of the digital and ICT play towards sector digitalization has had this deflationary impact towards the future of our economy. So with that backdrop in mind, of course, as I said, we had very interesting, diverse, distinguished guests here. So we'd like to get into their thinking, how they're navigating the future, what strategies they're pursuing. And of course, it will be interesting to hear their thoughts and comments. Perhaps I can start with Anwar, Safaricom.
Hi.
Welcome to Dubai.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
One of the things that I think was very interesting that the Ethiopian government announced their 2025 Digital Ethiopia strategy. And I thought one of the very ambitious points that they made is they're considering almost a contribution for digital economy to be around 40% of GDP, which is, I think, pretty ambitious. And I think given that you're now entry into the market, how are you and how is your strategy working out to ensure that you're delivering for your business while ensuring the ambition levels of the government? Any comments and your perception and thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, firstly, I think it's important to describe what Safaricom is. So we just won the license in Ethiopia about 2 years ago now. We're a consortium made of Safaricom Kenya, which is part of the Vodafone group, but also, the Kenyan government is the 35% investor. We're also Vodafone, Vodacom, and BII, and Sumitomo, right? So it's a massive consortium from different countries. And I think that colors our thought a little bit in terms of how we look at the investment. So from a pure digitalization perspective, what we're doing is we have to invest. There's only one operator there. They're roughly, I think it's about 70% of the market right now in terms of reach. However, we're coming in with a completely new network. It's 5G enabled everywhere. We're not going to enable it initially because it's a country that's still developing. So from a perspective of what we're doing to make 40% of the economy digitized, we're creating an infrastructure. But then we're also importing all the know-how we have from the UK, from Kenya, from Japan, etc., so that we can implement that to assist in the digitization journey of the country.
And so what are some of the sectors that you are really focused on in terms of your early ventures into? I know that you're, for example, big on fintech itself.
Yeah.
What has been some of your learnings there?
No, so the thing that we believe is going to make the biggest difference. Okay, so we're laying the pipes, we're putting up the towers. That's normal, that's telco. The sector that we are strongest with is fintech. So we're coming in with the M-Pesa platform. We're finalizing the negotiations around the license. Now, I don't know if the crowd knows what M-Pesa is, but from the African context, M-Pesa is by far the most successful African fintech. In Kenya, about 50% of the GDP goes through the M-Pesa platform, and about 96% of the households use M-Pesa or fintech in order to do it. It's an extraordinary technology. So that's where we're going to go. So we have the finance element, or the fintech, which is powered by our GSM network. Whatever information we collect, so as we were talking about earlier, big data, machine learning, all the algorithms, the back end that are supporting the fintech element of the business as well.
Well, that's great. I'll come back to this for a second because I think this is a great learning of how telecoms have innovated in a particular sector. And I think some of the learnings we can take and see how other sector digitalization can happen with the investments that you've made in your networks and others. I'll switch to you, Badr. First of all, congratulations on launching Vodafone in Oman. One thing that I actually picked up and I thought was very interesting, you made a statement that you said, well, first of all, it's a crowded market for everybody to understand, Oman. I think you've made a bold move in now getting into the market. But one thing that I really liked, you said that we will do things differently and digitally from the start. Tell us about that.
True. Thank you, Fuad. It's my pleasure to be also part of this panel list. Vodafone in Oman is a greenfield digital operator that has become an example of an entirely digital operator providing a completely digital customer experience, not only within Oman, but also within the region. And the government primary objective of bringing a third telecom operator in Oman is to fast-track the digital journey that we are taking in the country as well. And selecting Vodafone as the partners who is the leader in innovations is a step forward towards the journey that the government has taken forward. As you said, it's a very saturated market. It's been a very exciting journey for us. But what has made us navigate through this market is that we have adopted a digital business model that has allowed us to be agile, lean, and efficient. And that's where we are able at least to penetrate into the market with a small and agile and differentiated customer digital experience. Not only that, we've set ourselves in a model where we also work with partners locally or globally. That has also enabled us to host some of the expertise which would allow us to also address the market faster and more efficient. So far, I think it's been exciting. I know we've been quite busy with building the foundations, but we have a lot of ambitions toward the new emerging technology as well.
That's really great. Thanks. Mazyad, if I can switch to you. You've recently rebranded in Kuwait. And since your rebranding, you focused quite a bit on digital transformation. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're extending your networks and digital services across sectors and inducing new growth from the ICT perspective?
Thanks. I will just start from the slogan, enriching people live, and ambitious of digitization. Everybody talk about digitization. In reality, with the digitization, you are not touching only the consumer, you are also touching the business, the government. You know, we have seen a lot of government move to the e-government. A lot of government now start to use applications, start to use big data, and so on in order to ease the life and to enrich their experience with the customer. Frankly speaking, the digitalization by itself, it's not, as a strategy, it's an easy to do. It's not that difficult, but in reality, there is a lot of tough decisions that you need to take in order to execute and make this real happen. Just for example, 2019 was a very critical year for us in STC Kuwait, and we made a lot of decisions, and it has been actually put with our strategy and alignment. When we change, an example, our brand, you see the new brand come with a certain promise to the customer in consumer or in business. And that promise, it is a digital promise. That promise is an experience promise. That promise is enablement promise that we have to do. But we were at the time, we were a mobile operator. So we need to move out from mobile operator to be an ICT player. That it can happen, but it take very long time. So what we did, first of all, we are doing two things in parallel, which is in 2019. We were the first who launched commercially 5G. At the time where 5G is at the beginning of it, CPE is not available. You know, customer, the only usage for the customer is very limited to higher speed, and maybe gamers will see the difference on the latency and so on. At the same time, we did an acquisition for QualityNet, which is a fixed plus part of ICT capability that we will do. That will take us from mobile operator to the integrated operator. And then with the time, we move to fulfill and to be enablement for government, for big company in oil and gas sector, in banking and others. We have to go farther. And that further brings us to another acquisition, which is we acquire ePortal, which is a pure an ICT player in Kuwait. So put all this together, taking us from where we are in 2019 to where we are today. We are an ICT player. We are fulfilled, and we are fulfilling the promise that we give it to the customer with launching our new brand. Digitization. Yes, why I said that it's difficult. 5G, a lot of operators are encouraged to do it, but frankly speaking, it's very expensive. And ROI, it will take time, and getting return of this investment, it has a lot of challenges. And 5G is meant to the business, you know. We, in an example, in STC Kuwait, we are in the region, I don't know if we are the only or we are the number one, is we are the one who have the full 5G, which is the SA, standalone, full 5G, where you have the capability to deliver the promise that you give it to the companies and to cooperation. However, that need to be developed. Demand is developing with the time. So we need to work with our partner, with our customer, in order to show them the value of using 5G and using ICT services and so on.
Makes sense, Mazyar. Thanks a lot for the rundown of this. One of the things, I'm not sure we can talk about this a little bit more, is the economics of 5G. Is it more to do with the business model today that the industry has, versus if we switch the business model in terms of how telecoms are creating value for the end enterprises, and as a result you can capture a share of revenues back? It is a different shift of models, and we can discuss and reflect a little bit. And you also talked about the partnership, which is a big deal in terms of making this work. With that in mind, I'll switch, Miko, to yourself. I think one of the things that we've done in EY, we ran something called an ecosystem study. And we spoke to 1,000+ enterprises globally from different sectors, and with the concept of emerging technologies and 5G and all those things. And 70% of our customers in the enterprise said that ecosystem matters more than ever. How you make those ecosystem work, how the service flow and money flow, all of that happens, we need to work together. Your new purpose, since your CEO, Pekka, came in, had announced a very interesting purpose statement, or repurpose itself. How are you using that purpose and leading the way in breaking down barriers, driving digital infrastructure build, and helping your customers in the markets?
Thanks, Fuad. And actually, I feel sometimes I'm a salesman of hope, because that's so important in this market. Anwar, we work together with Anwar in Ethiopia, and I think if you think about the unbankable people in Ethiopia, the hope that we will bring together with M-Pesa to the market, the value that you were talking about in Kuwait, what type of digital service we are bringing, I think those are all extremely important. I've now spent about 1 year in the region. I was working globally, and I see a lot of great initiatives. Many of the Gulf countries are working on the 2030 plans. I think there's a lot of regulation happening on those, and I think that links the way how we at Nokia look at it. So if you think about the purpose, as you mentioned, so we say we create the technology, as Ian is saying, by the way, but we create a technology that helps the world to act together. And for me, in this region, it's not only about the technology. It's also linked very much with our new ESG strategy. So when you think about how we help, to build these things together with the regulators, with the operators. So in our ESG strategy, we talk about, first about the environment, like the circular economy. So it's extremely important, maybe more important in Africa, than here. So how can we bring kind of perhaps refurbished equipment to help in some of those cases, rebuild 2G, 3G, those are important in some of those markets. So I think that's the first part. Security, I will come back on that later on, but it's extremely important part of our kind of ESG strategy, how we look at security as a whole. We look at the corporate responsibility. So Nokia is one of the most ethical companies. Actually, I think it's pronounced to be the most ethical company in the world for, I think, now 5 years in a row. Working in markets with high risks, it's extremely important. I think we have been, with Anwar, doing a lot of things around that as well. So how to make sure that we bring the good practices, good business practices to the markets. I think the industries, how we digitalize those. So we talk about footprint often, what is the footprint of our products, but we started to talk about the handprint. So handprint is that how we actually bring the added value of our telecommunications to the environment, to the kind of companies. And I think that the fifth element on our strategy is around the bridging the digital divide. So that's where I come back to my hope discussion. So I was a long time ago working in India, and we were connecting the schools, and I learned that there were schools where girls could go to school for 6 years and they come out without learning how to read and write. And if you think about this type of things on how we can work in the environment where schooling is not the privilege for everybody, I think those are the things that we believe we bring in here. So together with these operators, our CSP customers, so the enterprise will be extremely important. The way how we build this, all these 5 aspects of our strategy. Yep. And I think we are saying kind of there is no green without digital. And I think that's kind of my hope in the end, what we would like to do together in the markets. And it goes much beyond kind of perhaps the technology. It's many other things in there as well.
Yeah, thanks, Mikko. I think it's encouraging to hear the holistic approach Nokia is taking, right? Because it's not about just selling your gear. You have to think about the ecosystem and all the different aspects around it. So very encouraging. Dr. Bilal, if I can turn to you, ITU has a unifying force in the industry. And it's obviously had an interesting role to foster more collaboration between the different industry actors. You recently came out of your Bucharest summit, where you talked about your ITU strategic plan. How are you using that in order to bring this unification and driving this ICT growth globally? If you can share with the audience some of the salient points of that Bucharest plan.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much for the question, and good morning to everyone. 2022 has been a phenomenal year for ITU because we had to catch up after COVID with 3 of our conferences. We kicked off the year in March in Geneva with the World Telecommunication Standardization Assembly that was kicked off with a Global Standardization Symposium on the international standards to enable the digital transformation to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Then in June in Kigali, we had our World Telecom Development Conference, where we launched the Partner to Connect initiative, and we had billions of dollars of pledges to connect the world. And then we ended the year in terms of the conferences, as you mentioned, in Bucharest with the Plenipotentiary Conference, where about 3,000 delegates from 183 countries convened to elect the new leadership team for the ITU, but also to approve the strategic plan. And the strategic plan, to your question of the ITU, has basically 2 elements. One is universal connectivity, and the second is sustainable digital transformation. So if I relate it back to today's keynotes from His Excellency Mohammed Ramzi from TDRA, he mentioned the telecom and digital. And you see in our strategic plan, universal connectivity is mostly telecom, and the sustainable digital transformation is the digital element. Also, the fireside chat with the A&E talked about the transformation of Etisalat into more of a techco. And again, you can see the conversions between connectivity, telecom, and digital transformation. Next year, we will have the World Radio Conference hosted here by TDRA and UAE, which will look at the 6G and beyond in terms of frequencies and allocations. But also COP28 will be here. And again, tying it back to the strategic plan of the ITU, it's about sustainable digital transformation. So the sustainability element has been on the agenda of all corporations and countries in terms of developing the digital transformation with sustainability in mind, from an energy efficiency and from an e-waste management perspective. So those two imperatives are going to drive our work in the next 4 years in terms of connecting the 2.7 billion unconnected people around the world, and that's the universal connectivity. And post-COVID, it became evident that the digital platform is our lifeline. And so the digital transformation is going to be the other focus for the ITU in the next 4 years. But when I say the ITU, it's really all of us. The ITU is the 193 member states. It's about 900 private sector companies. All the companies on the panel today and speakers today are members of the ITU. And also about 180 universities and research institutes bringing that cutting-edge research to enrich our standards development, our radio spectrum allocations, the satellite orbits. And now we talk a lot about the non-terrestrial networks, which is a very good component or addition to be able to bridge this connectivity gap. Non-terrestrial includes LEOs, GEOs, MEOs, and et cetera. So those are the two imperatives in terms of the strategic plan. And in the next few years, you'll see a lot more partnership drive from the ITU. The Partner to Connect is a kickoff to that initiative. But the new leadership team is really looking to forge more partnerships with the private sector, with foundations. I'll mention later on, maybe we'll talk about the Gates Foundation and the M-Pesa and the money transactions over the mobile phone. That's where we're heading.
Cool. Thanks, Dr. Bilal, for the rundown of that. Andrew, if I can turn to you a little bit. First of all, welcome back to Dubai.
Thank you.
Although I love Boston, but I think you'll prefer, once you spend more time in Dubai, I think you'll like Dubai more.
So far, so good.
So far, so good. Okay, cool. Andrew, let's talk about value creation. We've heard from Ethos a lot as well about the number of strategies that they have taken, and most of the telcos that we speak to are obviously considering and experimenting with different new market models, from delayering to divesting, acquiring, getting into JVs and others. And if you create this NetCo model and a ServCo model, which essentially allows them to create a bit of a different balance sheet, does it really lend itself for long-term value creation? I would love to get your perspective. How do you see the future of telecoms and the long-term value creation, not just a short-term fix for the industry?
Well, thank you for that. And good morning, everybody. It is great to be in Dubai. So the key term here is long-term. When we look at the way the markets, the financial markets are changing, and we'll see a lot more change over the next couple of years, I believe, given the macroeconomic conditions around the world. We've enjoyed 10 years of very strong financial markets, and those markets very generously rewarded short-term gains. And we've seen a lot of companies, and you mentioned some of this, OpCos, NetCos, TowerCos, M&A, divestitures, even some 5G arbitrage. There's been a lot of financial arbitrage that has been very well received. If we look at the market today, more and more focus goes where it should, and that is long-term financial sustainability. Long-term financial sustainability, and I think we heard an excellent speech this morning, can only be achieved by truly creating next-generation sustainable provider. What does that really mean? Digital transformation, quite frankly, it's become a great buzzword. Digital transformation, we've been talking about it for 20 years. But today it's becoming a reality. It's becoming a necessity. It's becoming, we have to do this defensively. And those of us who actually are able to go on the offensive would be really, really successful. So to me, and I am probably extraordinarily privileged because Netcracker gets to work with practically really most leading telecom innovators in the world, so I get to see multiple perspectives. Badr is actually very fortunate because he has a greenfield. So, and it's an incredible playground to innovate and really go to market, but most people can't afford to do what you do. because we have massive legacy, we have infrastructure. So I think there's two key elements to long-term financial sustainability. One is innovation, without a doubt. And innovation is applicable to both business models and technology, and they have to go hand in hand. We heard a lot about being customer-focused today, customer first. That's a must. And ironically, we've always been in a consumer business, and it's only recently that we recognize that we need to be much, much closer to the consumer than we had been for all of those years. So innovative business models, certainly digitalization, certainly cross-selling, ecosystems, omni-channel, all of those are critical elements for us, both on business and consumer verticals. The second piece, and I think this is also something that we're starting to recognize, is people. Innovation can only be achieved by having the right teams, the right talent. And traditionally, telcos have not been competitive in attracting that talent, in retaining that talent. I think we are now in the position where we're recognizing, as the industry, that we have to compete for that talent. We need to make ourselves more attractive. We need to find ways to not only attract these people, but retain these people, have them invest in long-term well-being of our companies and long-term success. And I think we're seeing more and more companies going to market and being much, much more competitive in attracting that talent, both from the industry as well as investing in partnerships with universities and growing that talent. And finally, of course, finding the right partners. Finding the right partners to learn, to drive, to implement, to innovate with purpose, and drive towards that long-term financial sustainability, as opposed to just short-term gains that are rewarding in the short term, but not something that's going to sustain us in the long term.
No, thanks a lot. I think that's really the fear, that while telecoms are finding new market models, they don't use that as only a short-term spike in the balance sheet, but reinvest into growth areas where they can have long-term value creation. You mentioned Badr is privileged, so let me ask something, Badr. With your greenfield status, does it really give you an added advantage when it comes to deployment of new technologies?
It has been actually our biggest advantage. If you see today, what we offer is everything is centered through the app, the My Vodafone app. And the My Vodafone app, today, if you look at the population of Oman, we have around 4.5 million. And we've already reached a download of close to 1.5 million. So that's almost 30% of the population, with a conversion rate of around 25%. And the way we've designed the app, it has certain important pillars. It's a real-time, it's personalizations for the customer, it's a data-driven, and we learn a lot from that. We set ourselves to become more of an adopting big data and AI. So we're starting to create a lot of insight from our customers. And we are using that insight down the lines to build a lot of personalizations, and also for us to become a data-driven decision organization as well. And that's how we think we will be able to distinguish ourselves and navigate in this competitive markets. Not only that, we've partnered with someone like Netcracker, for example, whom they've been in different markets. They've been with us in the journey of building that digital journey. So if you see everything that we've said, though we are at the starting of the journey and we are building the foundation, but we see the futures. We want to learn from all of the legacy traditional operators. The value add service of yesterday is the basic of today. So we need to look forward. And we also, in the market of Oman, we think the SME sector itself has a huge potential. So we would love to harness that, enable them, and grow them as well. So all of this now is in our radars, and all of the setup that we have set for ourselves Also from a network perspective, by the way, we are building 5G from day one. And over 70% of our 5G sites are fiber wired as well. We've already covered the whole capitals of Muscat with our 5G. So this sets us in the forefront to be able to provide to our customer not only a traditional telco service, but all of the new emerging and potential services. And we think a lot on the data science. And I think personally, that's a big space for us to be different and provide an added value to our customer.
That makes sense.
So can I just
please.
make a point? So Badr, I think I would add to this that your advantage is not just that you're not burdened by legacy technology and legacy infrastructure, but I think perhaps more importantly, you're not burdened by legacy thinking. And I think, because everything comes back to people, and you started building your company as a next generation digital provider. You are not moving from telco to techco. You started as a techco. And I think we heard the path that Etisalat is on to make that move. And I think that the biggest challenge is mentality. It's legacy thinking. It's the way we've done business for the past 20, 30 years, and we've seen 50 years, 100 years in some cases. We're seeing this all over the world. So I think that's going to be the biggest differentiator, and that is today, I think, your biggest advantage that allows you to make those leap forwards because your thinking is different.
If you allow me, I would like just to quickly give us two use cases of how are we leveraging on big data and analytics. Today, our service operation centers, because everything is centered on our app and we have 100% penetrations, when we have a pattern of issues, we have like an artificial intelligence. We don't wait for the call center to generate tickets. The system automatically analyzes the pattern, and if they see abnormality, it generates tickets that goes automatically to our service operation center. And so we are able to react faster to the customer's issues. In addition, also, if you look at our cybersecurity team, we have actually 2 people that are managing our cybersecurity. But we've adopted the big data and analytics big time. In fact, recently we've won an award for that. We've analyzed over 70 billion of incidents. And that is only done by adopting an artificial intelligence. So I think the future is definitely there, and you can never be efficient and agile if you don't adopt this.
That's very interesting, because I think if you're focused on digitalization, automation, and data, you can't ignore security and cyber with that as well. It's a big deal. And I think, Miko, if I can ask you this question, is given the fact that now we are venturing in the space that Badr is talking about and how we are digitalizing in a much more pervasive manner, when we spoke to the CISOs, the Chief Information Security Officers, majority of them still believe in the telco segment that the security considerations are not adequately factored in to the strategic investment plans of the company. I'd like to get your take from a Nokia perspective. How are you thinking and looking at the security paradigm and ensuring that we have networks and the foundational architectures that are really future-proof in that sense to help out on the strategy that Badr and others are venturing on?
I think it's actually everything. It's one of those 5 pillars of our ESG, and I come from Europe, and I think we are learning in a very hard way right now that in energy sector we have been challenged, and the security might have not been thought through in the country strategy. So now think about when we are digitalizing the society, when we are digitalizing the industries, it's going to be extremely important. And the approach that we have taken for the security is, we call it, it's kind of a design for security. So there's the proactive part, which is linked into everything in our internal processes. And then there's the kind of a reactive part. On the proactive start, it kind of starts from the whole feature screening. So when we are designing, it's not only about the mobile networks, by the way, so it's everything. We provide the IP, we provide the optics, so the whole network needs to be thought through this security. So it's about looking at the features, how we design them. It is then on the system level, how does that affect the security? We come into the development, and there you look at, starting from screening your R&D engineers, right? So you look at the people you have in there, that they are all, according to the safety standards. But of course, then all the procedures, everything, how you do it, it goes into the integration and verification. So these are the steps that we do in our design for kind of security. But then on top of that, we have today American standard houses who are coming and doing the audits for our internal procedures, so that we can certify that the products that come into the networks are actually according to those. We all, at least I'm a telecom engineer, and during the 30 years, I think that we have all seen the ups and downs. So there are some hiccups in our networks, and of course that's the other part of being in the kind of a proactive part, so that whenever there are any incidents on the network, when we collect the data, we are proactively also looking at them, that despite all what we've done, if there are some other things on how you actually learn and how you correct those potential issues and reconnect that back to the R&D cycle. So I think it's something that I see extremely important. I have seen now we are in a kind of a growth path for mobile networks in Middle East and Africa. We have taken market share. You are one good example of that. And when I talk with the C-level around these industries here, I see that the security becomes to be more and more important. It helps us, maybe we come from a little bit neutral country somewhere up in the north, but I think the approach there is, of course, that it is important. And it's not only the security, it of course comes to the ethical things. So the way how we interact, we want to make sure that we interact in a right way. So I think it's everywhere, and I'm more than happy to talk more about it later, but just to give you...
No, this is good that you are taking a bit of an end-to-end approach to not just the radio part, but the transport.
Everything in there, because it's like you cannot sacrifice. The weakest part is, of course, always then how vulnerable your system is. And I think I want to go back there. So when you look at what is happening with the energy sector right now in Europe, think about that in the digital area. So I think the operators and the governments, the regulators need to take it. We are taking it, of course, seriously, but I think it becomes to be more and more a decisive factor.
Yeah. One thing I think, as Dr. Bilal, you mentioned about this whole terrestrial and non-terrestrial, right? This is essentially still in the making around the networks of network thinking as we evolve from 5G to advanced and 6G and all that. And I think the security considerations would only multiply going forward, right? Any just comments on that point that Mikko mentioned around the security considerations? Any thoughts, any prevailing discussions in ITU?
Yep, certainly. I mentioned earlier the 2.7 billion unconnected people. 60% of those are in Africa. So 2.7 billion is 1/3 of the world population. We're about 8 billion people today. In the Arab states, the connectivity is about 60%. Asia Pacific is about 64%. So just basic connectivity remains a big challenge and a big strategic priority for the whole ITU and its membership. But certainly it should be affordable, secure communication. And that's where the security aspects become something that has to be done by design. In terms of the technologies to be able to bridge this gap in connectivity of the 2.7 billion, there is the traditional technologies, the cellular, and today, I think last time I checked on the statistics, the world is about 20–25% still 2G. And when you say 2G, there is no data. Okay? And then the next maybe 20–25% 3G, and then the last 50% is between 4G and 5G. So the world is running at different speeds. Here in UAE and the Gulf region, 5G is prevalent, and yesterday we had the pleasure of having the DO CTO with us, Salim, that shared with us the deployment of 5G in UAE, and it's fantastic. The rest of the world is still, a lot of people are still on 2G. So with 2G, we cannot talk about data, we cannot talk about security. So there is a big gap to be filled in terms of connectivity. And certainly the cellular and mobile operators play a key role because they are on the ground, they're very close to the customer. But we're seeing also big interest and penetration by satellite operators at the various heights, LEO, MEO, and GeoSats. We're seeing a lot of investment by geospatial devices, planes, high-altitude platforms. And I think we need to tap in on all available technologies to be able to move fast. In the last few years, we only connected about 100 million people. So at the speed at which we're going, this gap of 2.7 billion unconnected will take many, many years. Our strategic plan is 4 years, but we're looking at a vision of 2030, and we're hoping by 2030 we'll be able to connect the whole world. It's a very ambitious goal, but collectively, I think the experiences of the more advanced and more developed countries, like here in the UAE and the Gulf region, provides an opportunity for investment in Africa, where 70% of the population or so is still unconnected, and it's one of the biggest population in the world. So certainly providing security, connectivity, and applications, such as you mentioned with the mobile transaction services, would give people the appetite to connect.
That makes a lot of sense. I think non-terrestrial is certainly a very big deal going forward, a lot of investments and new money going into that. But when I spoke to some of the LEO providers, one of the comments somebody made to me is that most of the 5G security considerations today are built into the terrestrial part of the networks. And as 3GPP evolves and there's interworking between terrestrial and non-terrestrial, there's a big gap still to make sure that non-terrestrial security considerations are plugged in as well. So something that we should definitely consider. Miko, you're saying something.
I just wanted to make a comment that of course, I mean, we understand the low ARPU markets, but you cannot sacrifice security, right? Yeah. So we have to make it affordable, because if you are doing a banking system and in a low ARPU market, Anwar, I don't think you are happy if the system is not secure, right? It's not an option, right?
No. Yeah. But the thing is, the security, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to grasp it from all the elements. So it's the behavioral elements are probably the biggest issue in terms of security, especially in terms of our markets. So it's every single layer that needs to be looked at, whether it's social engineering, whether it's the actual systems themselves, the connectivity, whatever. But it's a big discussion to have.
Sure. I would actually add one more thing to this. Security is at the very core of all of our solutions, and we architect all our solutions with security in mind. But our industry is changing so quickly that regulators are behind on security and telecom. And I know this because we work very closely with the governments. We work with the US government, we work with the UK government, and a number of others on how to make telecom more secure. And I think if we put this in context of digital transformation and how we think of building for the future, we have to be prepared for the unknown. Security is going to become much greater, you can call it an asset or burden in our industry. And we are, in many cases, are not prepared to face of what's to come. And guess what? That's just one element of many elements that we have to prepare for. We need to prepare for the unknown. We need to build our solutions with the flexibility and agility that we can very quickly adapt to new regulations, to new requirements, new customer demands, new verticals, new industries, new ecosystems. And to me, security is just as you call it, a pillar. And I think that's exactly right. It's a fundamental pillar that has to be architected with the flexibility and agility to be future-proof. And I think that's just another critical element of digital transformation.
If you don't mind, I will add to this. Security is a demand, global demand. And when we talk about the security, providing right security and needed security for telco operator, that's needed for sure. But customer also need to have a security. And customer look for us as telco operator in the country to help them, not only to give them a secure pipe, also to do a security practice and system and solutions to those different customers. And you go from SME to very sophisticated solution. Yes, it's an unknown. Yes, there is a lot of challenging is there. But we as telco operator in different country, we are trying, and this is what brings us to ICT domain. We are trying to fulfill this demand because we are local. We have a trust between us and a customer. We grow from basic connectivity, which is we providing to the end user, consumer, or also business, and we have very long relation. Now with the sophistication, with the IoT, with the evolution of the technology, we are in need really to participate and fulfill this requirement from security on the customer level and in certain cases in the country level.
I agree. And I think telcos, I think, probably know this, but they do have a very privileged, trusted status on a local level. And if you look at all the mission-critical industries, of course, they are local themselves. So I think extending your trust brand beyond connectivity and as you're doing acquisitions into ICT space will be an interesting way to incrementalize your revenue base. Maziad, if I can just ask you to extend a little bit more on the holistic other challenges that you've faced as you started to venture in the markets around digital transformation. What are some of the barriers that you have faced and how you're overcoming those from the overall opportunity and challenge perspective?
Yeah, I'll just go back to we came from basic connectivity, fixed and wireless, but with the evolution today on the industry, with the need of machine talks, artificial intelligence, IoT, and all of that bring a lot of challenges. And these challenges is that previously we were providing the services and requirements for a customer, but today we cannot do this. This will go with the ecosystem. This ecosystem has a lot of partnership with a different partner. Just mention the security part. You need to have a lot of partnership with different companies to provide the needed services for the customer. But also part of that partner is the regulator, is the regulation side. I'll just give you an example. And when I mentioned in Kuwait, we have been one of the first country launching 5G. And Kuwait, it is from fixed infrastructure. We don't have much customer and different type of customer. They're depending more on wireless. Launching 5G in the entire country, all operator, once one operator launch it, others will have to invest. There is no question there. We launched that, and that decision was studied with the regulator, and we get their approval to do this in 2019. And I really cannot imagine what we'll do in the pandemic time.
Yes.
People working from home, people learning from home, people doing a lot of people sitting and do a lot of entertainment from home. That consumed huge traffic. That will never be fulfilled without having 5G in Kuwait. And that has been appreciated from the regulator. But when you go with the evolution, where are we going to go? So it's an ecosystem. It's us as an operator, as we mentioned, we are a trust partner with a customer and different type of customer. A partner with us who sometimes provide solutions and technical solution or app or whatever. And also regulator who orchestrate all of that. This is a big challenge. And just give example, when we acquire QualityNet, the aim is to go to the integrated operator, and we were also using the submarine cable because they have this capability, submarine cable capability and so on, and utilizing the country as a Kuwait. Kuwait location, geographical locations between 3 big countries. That by itself bring a lot of value for a hyperscaler. There is a data center requirement. There is so many things that need to be done on the ground, and that need to be orchestrated rightfully from regulator side. So it's an ecosystem. Challenge is that how to assure that all this ecosystem work together, because as maybe just mentioned, we were talking about digitization 20 years ago.
Yes.
But today it is about execution of that. Pandemic enforce and show us the value of that. And I think a lot of government take decisions on moving forward, moving faster, because of what they have seen in pandemic and the need of the technology. And people start to be using, people enjoying sitting home and entertainment, people enjoying, as of today, a lot of companies and also a lot of government, different entity, they are allowing their people to work from home. So there's a change. This change, a complete ecosystem have to come up with it, otherwise we cannot be achieved.
Right, thanks, Maziad. Anwar, if I can switch back to you, going back to the notion of this, how you have succeeded in the fintech space and extended telecom services into the finance sector. What has been the secret sauce behind that success, and what learnings can we take to other sectors from the telecom perspective?
I think, I don't particularly think there's a secret sauce. I think what was most useful for that is leveraging what you have in the GSM space, and then be able to extend that to a sector that's relatively similar, or maybe a lot dissimilar, but you can still take advantage of what you've built. You have the distribution, you have access to the customer, you have scale on the ground, you have certain attributes that nobody else has. And I see Miriam, who's doing our Vodacom services, financial services on the other side, who's our sister company from Vodafone and Vodacom. So it's all that. It's taking advantage really of using what you have. You have lots of data on the customers. You know what they're doing. You know where they are. You know how they behave. You know their spending patterns. You know their levels of ARPU. And then taking that and then offering financial services against that. You know their credit rating because you have algorithms at the back. You have the machine learning that can assist you in providing loans. It can provide insurance, whatever it might be. So my feeling, or in terms of secret sauce, is just do what you do well and extend it to another industry.
But how much of you in the telecom sector have to know about the ins and outs of the finance industry working so that you could create that insertion point? And the reason I ask is, I often talk to telcos around, you've built this intelligent 5G networks, you have to find a way to extend that into other enterprises, be manufacturing energy. And the key point is, we don't talk the language, right? We have the expertise and the technology, but how do we interact with some of the use cases that they have and that deep expertise that they demand from us in some cases? So I'm interested. Finance might be a little bit of an anomaly because it's a much more mature industry from that perspective.
Yeah, but it goes to what Andrew's point was earlier. It's talent, right? So we grow to the level, or we can perform to the level of our best talent. We can't go beyond that. If we don't have the talent to do mining or go into another sector that we have no talent or we have no knowledge about, then we can't go there. So I think it's a question of bringing in the correct talent and then going into that new market. But with the current model in telcos and even techcos, you're not going to go there because you don't have that. It's a very protected model. People don't want to break through their space, right? They don't want new people with them. So therefore, you're never going to get there until you start making really difficult decisions about talent.
Makes sense. And Dr. Bilal, I think related to that, I think there is that in terms of your core expertise and how much you know, but I think it will be a missed opportunity for the telecom sector if that marriage doesn't happen. What I mean by that is that there's a huge demand in industrial automation. They are desperate to find a better way to digitalize their operations. And there is a nice match, but there's a bridge that needs to be. And I think ITU, given your position, how are you thinking of creating that bond, that marriage between the telco sector and the other sectors?
Absolutely. And that's the crux of the digital transformation. I think Anwar was very humble in terms of saying there was no secret in terms of the M-Pesa, but in the ITU, we use it as a model. We have a journey of this financial inclusion and digital financial services for about 10 years now. We launched a focus group with the Gates Foundation in 2014 to look at digital financial services for financial inclusion. And the reason the Gates Foundation came to ITU and handed us $5 million is to be able to create that dialogue between the telco regulator and the central bank. Okay? And that is the secret sauce, I think, from a regulatory perspective, having the enabling environment for the telecom operator to become a bank, for the bank to become a telecom operator, or for new entities that use the network to provide mobile financial services is really the enabling step towards it. I agree with you, the technology is easy, relatively. Of course, we have to have the talent to deliver it. And of course, we must have the security and trust. Because if you don't have the trust of the customer in transacting money over the network, it's not going to pick up. But to your point about this digital transformation, whether it's in the financial sector where you need to bring the telco regulator or the central bank and create the enabling environment, it takes years. The focus group that the ITU had was about a 3-year event where we kept inviting central banks and telco regulators to develop reports on customer protection, regulatory frameworks, models, switches, and so on. We did relatively the same thing in the health sector. On digital health, we worked with the WHO, the World Health Organization, that has been transforming its health delivery by including digital, because we don't have enough doctors in the world to tend to all the patients. However, mobile phones, especially smartphones now, can provide a lot of diagnostics using AI for health. So in the ITU, we have a special group, focus group on AI for health between the WHO and the ITU. And again, here, digital health, we need the digital experts and we need the doctors. And enabling that dialogue between the health ministry and the telecom regulator to provide those apps that are certified to do AI for health is another example of digital transformation. The third one is in the automotive sector. Today, if you buy a new car, you have at least 2 SIM cards. When you say SIM cards, you say E164 number, a telephone number, and it could be either in the country where you buy the car, or it could be a shared code that you get directly from the ITU, because you might be roaming in Europe, and we have a lot of applications of shared codes today, the 882, 883 country code. We see a very rapid digital transformation in the automotive sector because the cars are connected. The user spends we spend a third of our lives at home, in the office, and in the car. The screen in the car is the 4th screen. After your TV, your laptop, your smartphone, your screen in the car is the 4th one. So we talk about multimedia, vehicular multimedia, and we had a focus group with a lot of industry, Hyundai, Volkswagen, Tata, Haval, and so on, so quite international participation. This is a third example of digital transformation. And we can really talk about all the sectors, and to your point earlier, it is about bringing the Telecom and Digital Regulatory Authority to sit down and talk with the other sector being transformed to provide the enabling environment. It's about bringing the experts from the telco and digital space with the domain experts, whether it's healthcare, finance, transportation, to co-develop the solution that is trusted and could be delivered to the market. And this is happening today. And that's why in the ITU at the Plenipotentiary Conference, sustainable digital transformation was one of the key pillars. And we want to work with our telecom regulatory authorities to bridge that gap with the other regulators, health ministries, transportation ministries, central banks, and so on.
This is excellent. I think if anything, we have to be more deliberate about this in bridging that gap and catalyzing that marriage between the sectors. So congratulations on the efforts that you're making. So as we talk about digital transformation, I think we cannot ignore the topic of humans and people going forward. So our collective success, and I think, Mikko, you touched slightly about this, is going to be very much linked to how we are preparing our workforce today and into the future. And I think Nokia has obviously been involved in championing some of those initiatives within the markets that you operate. Can you share any examples with us what you're doing in terms of the workforce development and reskilling and training people?
Gladly. I want to be just half a minute first on the industry topic still. So exactly what we are doing right now. So we have a case of Arçelik in Turkey, for example, where we bring the experts of the industry together with our CSP operator and our understanding of the radio, and we bring those things together. So there's a lot of things that we are doing and working onto that. But let's get back to the people part. So I have my own 5G product. 5 daughters. Mm-hmm. And they teach me a lot of things in terms of what do the future generation want from their work, right? They all just entered from universities in there. And I was in Cairo earlier this week, and I spoke with a recently kind of a person who had joined Nokia, and she said that she joined because of the purpose. And I think that is what I see first is when we are developing the future, what we are saying here, there will be massively more. It's time for Africa, I should say that way, that's where the youth will be growing. We have countries of average age of 15. And what the young population is looking at first is that what is the purpose, what are the values, essentials of the companies, and that's the first thing that we are doing, a lot of things on that side, and I have found that out to be extremely important. Next is all the talent development, how we provide the opportunities to learn, whether it's about 5G, whether it's about how to be a line manager, whether it's about how to know about something else than just the short-term technical topics. Those are extremely important. And I think we've done a lot of things together with UN. So we have, just to give one example, in Saudi, I was 10 years kind of not coming to Saudi before I took this role. And I couldn't believe what I saw there, the change. And the proof point of that was that we brought 6 young females from the university. And talking with these ladies, they were just like talking with my daughters who have grown up around the world. We spoke about their hobbies, we spoke about their dreams. And I think that's what we've done also in Ethiopia. We are bringing female talents, we are bringing young talents together to kind of get that next level leadership. When I'm retired, hopefully we all retired, and the people who run the future, I think many of them will come from this region. And I think that's those things that we do there. So I think I could talk for hours of this. But
Super. No, I think putting humans at the center is extremely important for any future success. Andrew, I think you yourself have been quite passionate about this. You're driving a lot of complex transformation globally with your customers, and you're also enabling them, just like Miko, in terms of, tell us a little bit about your thinking around the successful digital transformation and the role of people and how you're helping that side of the equation.
So first of all, I'd like to comment on a question that you asked earlier. How much do we need to know about industries that we're trying to break into? And I think very quickly I'd say, who are we kidding? We need to know a lot more than those industries know about themselves. We're the underdogs go in there. Often, and there's been a lot of discussions, very good discussions about regulators. We're often much heavier regulated than those industries that we're trying to enter. So we need to know everything about them. And we need to come up with very creative business models and very creative ways to bring our competitive advantage to really survive and prosper in those new entries. So, and of course that goes back to people, that goes back to digital transformation, and that goes back to your question, what is the key to successful transformation? Well, it's, first of all, the key to successful transformation is to recognize that it's not transformation, it's transformations, it's plural. And it's interesting to me when I meet with leaders, telecom leaders around the world, that not all of them actually recognize that transformation needs to be managed holistically throughout the organization, because we're looking at least 4 different transformations. Right? We're looking at business transformation, we're looking at technology transformation, we're looking at organizational transformation, and last but not least, we're looking at cultural transformation. Mm-hmm. Right? And unless you bring it to a common denominator, and unless you have a true commitment of the leadership and everybody within their organization to attack those 4 holistically, your chances for success are probably slim. So, and I think when we talk about specifically about leadership involvement, that's critical. But I want to come back to just a couple more quick points. Customer focus. We talked a lot about customer focus. When I talk to people, and again, Netcracker, we have, as you've mentioned, we have a benefit of seeing many data points around the world. And the interesting question that I usually lead with when I'm brought into a boardroom or a C-level discussion about transformation is, what are you trying to accomplish? It's a very simple question, And I'm constantly shocked that I can ask that question of 3 different executives of the same company. If they're in 3 separate rooms, I'm most likely going to get 3 different answers. Right? So clearly defining objectives. Sounds very simple, but it's absolutely critical. That's number 1. Number 2, finding quick wins. And this is, again, where we at Netcracker have developed a proprietary methodology that's critical. Let's find something that we can do today. Let's not build something and deliver it in year, 2, 3, 4 years. We had that luxury 10 years ago. Those of us who've been in this industry for longer, some 20 years, we had that luxury. We don't have that luxury anymore. So customer focus, people focus, holistic management, leadership commitment, those are the critical
Thanks, Andrew. Well summarized. I think we're almost out of time, but perhaps I can have a bonus question for all of you, or maybe a trick question in a very 10-second answer. If I had a magic wand and I can grant you a wish, any wish that can come true, what would that be for you? Miko, if I can start with you.
Okay, I think it would be just a more peaceful world. Sorry to say that way. More understanding, and I think we are us helping on that.
Not
side.
selling more 5G networks.
No. I think that will happen, but I think it's more about happiness and having people to understand each other better. So.
Oh, I wish I could raise prices. That's what I wish. I'll put it down for that. That's all.
For me, if the ITU gets the Nobel Peace Prize in 2030 for connecting the world.
Oh, that's a nice one.
I don't know how to follow that. No, but I think the transformation, the holistic sense of the word, I think we have to achieve it. I think over the next short term, we will reposition the industry, and it's exciting to be here today and be part of it.
Mazyad, your wish.
Morocco to win the World Cup.
Oh, that's all. Inshallah.
They deserve it. They deserve it.
Probably in addition to that.
Go ahead. Actually, if there is, I was mentioning it's an ecosystem, vendor, partner. There is a lot of people working on the digitization, and it's gonna help the humanity. And I think if I have a wish, I want really the ecosystem to have the same ambitions to reach that target digitization.
That's Dr. Bilal's job now. He's agreed to make sure he facilitate and broker that cooperation.
In my case, it's simple. It's not about digital transformation or something. It's about fast-track our program of rollouts and all of the IT-related services. We are just starting the journey, and we want to fast-track that, simply.
Thank you guys so much. I think I've learned quite a bit myself with such great diverse opinions. And guys, please put your hands together for our distinguished panelists.